We considered Monday the first day of school, so Thursday was the last day of school. Mandatory minicamp is officially in the books. I'll give you my overall assessment of the 3-day minicamp, plus the first 6 months of GM John Spytek and head coach Pete Carroll in charge of the Silver and Black. That plus more on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for June 13th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page, you know we appreciate both. Show continues to grow each and every day because of your consistent support and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good. We shout him out. We appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line for you, 707-654-4693. We've got plenty of feedback to get to, so we'll close out the show, close out the week hearing from you. Like I said, a lot of good calls, a lot of good texts. We'll get in as many as possible as we close things out. Segment number 2, overall assessment of the 3-day mandatory minicamp for the Raiders and the first 6 months of GM John Spytek and head coach Pete Carroll being in charge of the Raiders. How do I feel about this team moving forward now that they're off for the summer and won't come back to the end of July for the start of training camp? That'll come up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, just news and notes of the day, and really most of it has to do with the official signing of linebacker Germaine Pratt. We'll jump right into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create the account, promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And, of course, I'll tell you more about them following segment number 1, but let's go ahead and jump right into it. The Raiders did make it official with linebacker Germaine Pratt, formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals. We talked about it on Thursday's show, but it became official like a referee's whistle later on in the afternoon once he got to the facility, once he went through his physical and everything else he had to make sure, sign the dotted line, cross the T's, dot the I's, all that good stuff. Then the Raiders made it official. They sent out the email and let it be known, where he was drafted, what he's done throughout the course of his career, and then talked about him starting all 34 games over the past 2 years, registered back-to-back 100-plus tackle seasons, including a career-high 143 tackles in 2024. His 143 tackles last season were ranked tied for 9th most in the NFL. He's also one of 3 players in the league with at least 5 interceptions, 5 forced fumbles, and 5 fumble recoveries since the start of the 2021 season, and a corresponding move, the Raiders waived safety Jonathan Sutherland. And if you remember Germaine Pratt, going back to when the Raiders made the playoffs and they had to take on the Cincinnati Bengals, that interception in the end zone or right before the end zone that Derek Carr threw, that interception was courtesy of Germaine Pratt. So he's a guy that, as you could tell by the last couple of years where he's got the 5 forced fumbles, the 5 fumble recoveries, the 5 interceptions, right, since 2021, he has a knack to get the ball, so he can do that. And that's something we've talked about quite a bit here on the show. Go get the ball, see ball, get the ball. So following practice on Thursday, Pete Carroll was peppered with a ton of questions. Vinny Bonsignore actually asked him about the signing of Germaine Pratt, and this was before it became official, so I didn't know if he was going to answer it or not, but Pete Carroll did in Pete Carroll fashion. So here's the question on why he found it necessary to go out and sign Germaine Pratt.
What was it about Germaine that made you guys kind of quickly come to terms with it?
Well, he's a really hard-nosed kid, tough kid, played a lot of football, has been really healthy, has played all of the positions to give us a flexibility that really will help us. And so we've been really pleased with Landon. He did a great job of taking over the leadership position and calling everything. And Devin has done a really nice job too to put these 3 guys together where they're on the field at the same time. That's a loaded up group, and they're all tough and they're all physical and they're all downhill players, which is the style that we love to play with. So I was really pleased that Johnny was able to get that done.
So that was head coach Pete Carroll talking about linebacker Germaine Pratt, and it caught my attention when he said, Elandon Roberts has done a really good job. I can't wait to see all 3 of these guys on the field at the same time. And, it's 2025. You don't normally see 3 linebackers on the field together, right? Most of the time you see 2 traditionally. That's what we see all the time now. So when he said Elandon Roberts, Devin White, and Germaine Pratt, that really caught my attention. So I'm sure they got something that they're cooking up in the lab between Patrick Graham, Pete Carroll, and others, right? So that should be interesting to see how they play them. So I wanted to get a little bit more details on exactly who the Raiders are getting in Germaine Pratt. So we reached out to Mo Edgar from ESPN 1530, covers the Bengals there in Cincinnati, does a fantastic job. He joined the show on Thursday, my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920, and talked about what the Raiders are going to get, what he sees in Germaine Pratt.
I see a guy who throwaway last year because while he did have a lot of tackles last season, I think most Bengals fans would tell you that his season in 2024 was kind of defined by missed tackles and kind of defined by not making the play. But if you throw that away, which is hard to do because it was the most recent season he played, if you look at his first 5 years in the NFL, he was a guy who, when the Bengals needed a play to be made, found a way to make it. I don't need to remind Raiders fans about the play that triggered the biggest celebration in Cincinnati sports in over 30 years when he had the interception of Derek Carr to wrap up that playoff game, the Bengals' first postseason win in 31 years. He is one of a handful of athletes in this town that when you say that the guy's name, you're going to think of a certain moment, and with Germaine Pratt, it's that moment. But I think that was kind of emblematic of his time here. He could play an entire game, and I don't want to say he would play poorly, but you really would notice him. And then, he would have a play where he strips Travis Kelce of the ball in a huge regular season game against the Chiefs at midfield when it felt like Kansas City was going in for the game-winning score. He always seemed plays like that. If you want to go back to the season after the Super Bowl, when the Bengals made the AFC Championship game, there was a 98-yard fumble return for a touchdown by Sam Hubbard. The fumble was caused by Germaine Pratt. So he's a guy who just, when it seemed like they needed a play to be made, found a way to make it. I would also say, this is a franchise that I think for a very long time didn't prioritize linebacker play, and the linebacker play they got for the most part reflected that. So they took Germaine Pratt in the 2019 draft. Frankly, I think if you look at the class of players the Bengals took that year, he ended up being the best guy. And he gave them a dimension of stability at that position, stability and durability. He only missed 2 games over the course of his entire time in Cincinnati, and one of them was a game where Zach Taylor rested all the starters. So you're getting somebody who's durable. You're getting somebody who, at his best, has a nose for the ball at precisely the right time. You're getting a guy who, if you get the player we saw for 5 years, is pretty dependable, rarely out of position, rarely could be accused of trying to do too much, that sort of thing. If you get the guy we saw last year, you're going to get a guy who really didn't make a lot of plays, got a lot of tackles, but I think, again, if you were to ask most people who watched the Bengals last year, who were some of the culprits on that defense that was so bad, many would say Germaine Pratt, if for no other reason. It just felt like when he had a chance to make a play, he didn't.
So it wasn't the most glowing review of Germaine Pratt. Yeah, he had a lot of tackles, but a lot of those were – and it's funny when he was explaining about the tackles and how many he had, and then there was a lot of missed tackles. I started thinking of the years where the Raiders and their linebackers would have a ton of tackles, but they would be the tackles that are way downfield. Like a ball carrier's already got 10, 12 yards down the field, and then all of a sudden a linebacker comes and makes a play. So sometimes you look at just the stats and you look at just the numbers, you're like, oh, man, this guy is a machine. He can do this, that, and the other. And sometimes they don't always tell the story, right? That's why I always say that I like to go with the eye test, because the numbers don't always tell the story if you just go back and look. So obviously you don't want to get the version of Germaine Pratt that the Bengals saw in 2024. You're hoping you get the version of Germaine Pratt that they saw before that, back in 2023 and before. But as you know, guys are free agents for a reason, right? Guys get released from teams for a reason. He didn't want to be there. He had requested a trade anyway, but there was no doubt, even if he hadn't requested a trade, that he wasn't going to be there. So I think it's still a good signing. I think the Raiders needed to add that veteran leadership and another vet in that linebacking room. It allows the young guys to develop a little bit slowly, but it's not all rainbows and puppy dogs when it comes to the signing of Germaine Pratt. But I thought that was an interesting little nugget that Mo Edgar brought to us there on the radio show on Thursday afternoon. Also, one more soundbite that I want you to hear from head coach Pete Carroll before we get into segment number 2 of the show. And this is about getting the ball. Again, spent a lot of time on Thursday's show talking about see ball, get ball, and the Raiders just don't get enough turnovers. They didn't create enough turnovers, but Jacorian Bennett told us, hey, Pete Carroll's all about the ball. So I asked him about that, and Pete Carroll gave a very detailed answer. Check it out.
You mentioned asking these guys to do certain things. Jacorian Bennett told us that you're all about the ball. See ball, get ball. How do you instill that into those defensive guys to go?
Every day. And the first thing I said to him in the first football meeting that we had was it's all about the ball. And today I started this last meeting that we had, it's all about the ball. It's about how you emphasize it. And it's not just that you emphasize it, it's how well you can emphasize it in creative manners. It's like if you're a teacher and you go out and you give this great lecture, you think everybody should learn what you wanted them to learn. If you don't keep coming back to the same messaging and the same teachings, it's likely that you didn't hit home with everybody. So it's the way that we emphasize it and the way we're consistently coming about it as creatively as we can and whatever it takes to get the message across. Our guys, right from the start, from day one, we had some big lessons about taking care of the football and offense and how they're going to tuck it and lock it and all those things. The guys have just done a really nice job. On the other side of the ball, in a mode in this offseason where you can't be physical, you can't hit guys, you can't tackle anybody. You have to use your imagination. And so that's sighting the football when you're attacking it and showing that you sight it. And so the gestures that you make to show us that you had a shot to punch at the football or take a shot at it, all of those things are the things that we value really highly. And so I think we reported today that was 2,300 times during these last 10 days that we took a shot at the football, and so that's the kind of emphasis that we need. And but it never ends. I mean, they never get it. They can stay with you. And so we have a real clear passage to getting that done, and we'll see what happens. It'll really be the key to our season.
I love how he wrapped that up right there. It's going to be a big part of our season. If you were listening to Thursday's show, that's exactly what I said. If they want to go where they want to go, they're going to have to turn the ball over. They're going to have to create. They're not going to turn the ball over. They're going to have to create turnovers, I should say. That's the proper way of saying it. They're going to need to force fumbles, get fumble recoveries, and they're going to need to intercept the ball. So funny. I talked to Eric Allen as soon as I got to the Raiders facility on Thursday for the last day of mandatory minicamp. He was literally just getting out of his Uber. Right, he was just about to walk into the building. I had already parked. I'm walking across. I saw him. I literally stopped, and I held him up. It was so funny. He joined my radio show on Thursday, and he said, man, you jammed me up. I said, yeah. It was like press coverage, right? I had you in press coverage and wouldn't give you the release, but I was in his ear for a good 10 to 12 minutes just talking about the Raiders and the fact that they don't create turnovers like they did when he was playing. And so he went into some really good conversation, and then he said, you know what? Let me just go ahead and be a guest on your show today and be able to break it down a little bit more. So he was a guest on my show. I have that. We'll bring it to you next week. I got a vacation coming up pretty soon, so I'll put him and Big Lincoln on those shows. That'll be part of kind of the best of while I'm on vacation, but really good stuff from EA. But you heard what Pete Carroll said right there, like getting the ball, making sure that they have the ball and going and hunting it is going to be a huge part of the Raiders season, especially if they want to get where they want to get. So what has the first 6 months been with GM John Spytek in place, head coach Pete Carroll in place, and how did the 3 days of mandatory minicamp go? My full assessment comes up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of this show, and that is Gametime. And I don't know how locked in you are on the NBA Finals, but you need to be locked in. The Indiana Pacers right now, they hold a 2-1 lead. A lot of people thought that they were just going to get ran straight out of the gym. I was not one of them. I still think OKC is going to win. But, man, Indiana is going to give them a run for their money. And that guy that my buddy Freddie Coleman calls the butterscotch brother, Tyrese Halliburton, he's going to make it very difficult on OKC because he is a guy that's going to get buzzer beater after buzzer beater after buzzer beater. So how could you be in the mix to check out these NBA Finals or any kind of action? Well, Gametime is going to be there for you. Even for the biggest playoff games, finals, prices on the app for Gametime actually drop closer to tip-off. And with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, no surprise fees, Gametime is a total game changer. And I think one of the best features, and it's very, very underrated, is the fact that you can see your exact seat before you buy. So there absolutely is no surprises. And it's always good to have a guarantee, right? With the Gametime guarantee, you know you're getting the best deal. And if you find a better price in the same row and section, they'll actually credit you 110% of the difference. So what do you need to do? Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Wanted to give you an overall assessment of the 3 days of mandatory minicamp. Wanted to give you an overall assessment of the first 6 months with GM John Spytek and head coach Pete Carroll. And the last 3 days of mandatory minicamp has been fun to be out there, seeing these guys go full throttle for 2 hours. Matter of fact, on Thursday, when I thought that possibly it was going to get called and they weren't going to have a practice, because a lot of coaches do that, they'll just say, hey, you guys have been working really hard in the OTAs. We're going to go ahead and let you start your summer break a little bit early. Pete Carroll actually went long, right? As he described it in the post-practice press conference, he said, man, it went to overtime. Wasn't my fault. The commissioner came down and went to overtime, and we had to get some extra work in, which was funny. That just shows you Pete Carroll's mentality, that he wants to maximize every minute that he can get with these guys and try to teach them and create those good habits that we've been talking about quite a bit here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So these guys were flying around. They were competitive. You could see how it was fun. These coaches got into it. I mean, every day, the last 3 days before practice started, I mean, these guys went through some drills just to kind of get the blood flowing, like a little pre-practice warm-up, and they got after it. And even on Thursday, the defensive coaches, they actually brought out one of those big old clear balloons, and the defensive coach was in the middle of the balloon, and it was wild. Pete Carroll even said afterwards, like, hey, they sprung that on me. I didn't see that coming. But they make it fun. They make these guys go out there and enjoy competing with each other and getting after it and having a lot of fun. And again, these coaches, all of them, they're all bought in on that as well. It's not like it's just head coach Pete Carroll. It's every single one of them. So if they're setting the tone, these players have no problem with following. Something that stood out over the course of the 3 days, like Lincoln Kennedy told me, he wanted to see the buy-in, what it looked like if these guys all wanted to be there. There's no doubt about it. I didn't identify one guy that looked like he didn't want to be there. Everybody was out there with a purpose. Everybody was out there trying to get after it. They even had 4 guys that were on tryouts that were out there. They weren't on the roster. We always get a roster when we walk in the building, and we looked up, hey, who's this number 63? Oh, he's not on the roster. Who's this number 13? Oh, he's not on the roster. Who's this number 47? Oh, he's not on the roster. So there was like 4 guys. One was a snapper, one was a kicker, one was a DB, and one was a big offensive lineman. I'll tell you right now, number 63 might as well have gone. He has about as much chance of making the squad as I do. Right? I'll tell you straight up, this was a big old dude. Like, I don't blame him for trying him out. He was a big old monster. He was playing the left tackle position. And when I was standing next to Lincoln and hearing, just his breakdown of practice and what he was seeing, he immediately looked over and said, I hate his stance. I hate his stance. And I said, what do you mean? He said he has his hands on his knee. And right when he was going to say they're going to do an inside move to get to the quarterback, the ball was snapped. They did an inside move, got to the quarterback. He's all, they're going to do that. They're going to do it. And he said, that's why I hate that stance. You can't stand there like that. But we could see that dude was, he was there on, like I said, on a tryout type of basis. He was giving it his all, and it just wasn't good enough, right? So he's a guy that I definitely know is not going to make the roster. I think I saw him throwing up a couple times as well, and that's what happens, right? You're going through it because they're going fast. It's hot out there, and and if you're not used to that and acclimated to that, it could be tough on the body. So he was really going through it, but it happens. That's how it goes sometimes. I think we all remember back in the day our practices when things didn't go so well, and we were looking for the nearest trash can or the nearest tree, right? One way or the other. It happened to me a couple times in basketball practice. Not going to lie to you. So that's just how it goes time to time, but. With that being said, these guys were all out there. They were all competing. You saw that they were, being aggressive on offense. Saw some really good passes from Geno Smith. I got to give him a lot of credit. I know I don't talk about him a lot, but there were some passes that you saw that just kind of blew my mind. Like, wow, what a throw. He made one at the end of Thursday's practice, and Trey Tucker ended up being the recipient of it. It was a touchdown pass. He threw it to the corner of the end zone, but the front corner, right next to the pylon, right? So it was a back shoulder throw, right? And it was on a dime. It wasn't like it was, lobbed in there or anything like that, or a floater to the back. It was right to the front corner of the end zone, right towards the pylon, back shoulder. Trey Tucker makes the catch. Trey Taylor and Ja'Cory Bennett were in coverage. And so it's funny. I'm standing there Paul Gutierrez is standing there. Harry Ruiz is standing there. Adam Hill is standing right there. And Vinny Bonsignore. We were all literally standing right where it happened, right? We were right on top of it. And every one of those guys was like, man, good throw, good catch. And then I looked and said, yeah, Jacorian Bennett should have intercepted that. Right? Like, that was a play that I think Jacorian Bennett should have intercepted. Because, again, you heard what Pete Carroll said in segment number 1. It's all about the ball. So that's one where you have Trey Taylor in coverage as well. You have help over the top. I thought JB should have taken, boom, a quicker step, reacted a little bit quicker, and boom, that's an interception. Something that he talked about. I got to get my pass breakups and turn them into interceptions. And you saw when he walked off, he was shaking his head. He was upset because he knew he had a play right there that he could have made. And those are the game changers. Those are the difference between 8 and 9 wins and 10 and 11 wins. Because that's a game changer. You intercept that ball on the 1 yard line. Guess what? He would have had a touchdown. It was no doubt about it. That was smooth sailing. That was a pick 6. That would have been his highlight of his career right there. But he wasn't able to come up with it because, it was a better throw and a better catch by Trey Tucker. And remember, Trey Tucker's not the biggest dude. So if he's coming up with this catch right there by the goal line, I mean, that's a nice throw on a dime. So that was one thing. Again, getting back to the ball is so important. You've got to be able to go and get the ball. And they were having an emphasis on that. You could see, the defense trying to make plays on the ball. They're trying to create habits as far as that's concerned. Michael Mayer, you could tell he's a guy that Chip Kelly really, truly believes in, that he's going to be a guy that is going to be able to make some plays for him, right? I mean, we know that he hasn't been able to get off to the start that he wanted to get off to in his career, but he's got an opportunity, and he's not the only one, right? When they say that you could play with 2 tight ends, maybe even 3 tight ends, you can go 12 personnel or 13 personnel, they mean it. Ian Thomas is going to be someone you need to watch out for. So you'll hear a lot of Brock Bowers. You'll hear a lot of Big Mike, but you'll also hear Ian Thomas. 13 personnel. We heard a lot last summer, right? About 12 personnel this, 12 personnel that. Oh, it's going to be so outstanding when they do it. And we never really saw it for one reason or the other. I think this year you're going to see 12 personnel and you're going to see 13 personnel. You're going to see Ashton Genty running the rock out of that, 2 tight end, 3 tight end set. You're going to hear Raheem Mostert running the ball out of that set. I just think that you're going to see a lot of that where we heard about it last year, but we never got to see it. So all in all, for 3 days, was it perfect? No, but it was very encouraging what we saw. And that leads me to the last 6 months of what we've seen with GM John Spytek and head coach Pete Carroll in charge. One, as I had someone chime in on my radio show on Thursday, it's been very calming. I mentioned earlier in the show this week, it's been very quiet. There's not a lot of noise. There's not a lot of distractions, right? When I had Mo Egger on my show to ask about Germaine Pratt, I had to ask him about the whole Trey Hendrickson situation and Shamar Stewart, their rookie that is already bad-mouthing the organization. He hasn't even played a snap for him. He said, well, I'll tell you this, it's not a short of subjects when I do my radio show, right? There's always something to talk about, and there's a lot going on, but it's a big distraction, right? The Raiders don't have that, right? It's been very quiet. It's been very productive, right? They haven't panicked, not one time. I even admitted that when we were in Indianapolis at the scouting combine on that Friday, when it was obvious that Matt Stafford was going to go back to the Rams, I panicked. I was like, you know what? Forget this. Trade whatever you got to trade. Go up to the number 1 spot. Go get Shedeur Sanders. Go get your quarterback, right? And, well, lo and behold, they could have got him all the way through the 5th round if they wanted him. They didn't, because they went and made the move for Geno Smith. They didn't panic. They didn't say that Matt Stafford was the only quarterback they can go get. They understood, hey, this is a guy out there in Geno Smith that Pete Carroll's very comfortable with, knows what he could do. So they went out and got him for a 3rd-round pick, and then they were able to execute their draft any way they wanted to. They lost guys in free agency. They didn't panic. They didn't start overspending. They grabbed a guy here, grabbed a guy there. And I'll tell you, I don't think from anything I've seen, and it's very early, I don't think they're missing anything from the guys that they lost, right? I know I got a lot of respect for Nate Hobbs, got a lot of respect for Trayvon Merrick, Robert Spillane as well, right? Marcus Epps, K'Lavon Chason. I mean, you name it. They lost them, but it doesn't look like they lost really anything from what I've seen so far. Again, small sample size, but I think that they're doing just fine. You haven't seen GM John Spytek look flustered, look like a young GM, look like a guy that didn't know what he was doing, right? You just don't see that. It just seemed very calm. It seems very, as a matter of fact, right? The plan is in place and they're executing it. What I said, if you listen to the show on New Year's Eve, I said I did a New Year's resolution show. I do it every New Year's Eve, heading into the New Year's. It just makes sense. And my New Year's resolutions for the Raiders were to make just win, baby, and commitment to excellence mean something, right? Because for the longest, for quite a while now, it's just been a T-shirt. It's been something that you go and buy at Wally's World for like $3.99 when it's on sale. Oh, that's cute. Oh, I know a Raider fan. I'll go buy him that shirt. Commitment to excellence. That's cool, right? I've seen more just win, baby, commitment to excellence, Raider shields as far as tattoos go on Faithful Raider Nation more than I've seen the Raiders win. Right? I mean, there's been more of that. There's been more, like I said, commitment to excellence and just win, baby has been just a slogan. It's been something cool to say, right? That's awesome. Yeah, remember when Al Davis used to say that? That was fun, right? That's something I say at the end of the show every time, right? Just win, baby. But that's what it's been. It's been a saying. And so my challenge to the Raiders were make that mean something. And I feel like right now, Raider Nation and this team, this organization has hope. They're not living by the wish creed. They're not wishing that things are going to get turned around. They hope that these are the right steps that they're going to take to get things turned around because it makes sense. And the steps that they're taking all look like they're aligning, right? So they feel like this is going to be the turnaround. Obviously, it's a long way to go, right? I don't want to sit there and put the cart before the horse. That would be reckless. But it just, for the first time in a long time, you actually truly feel like, yeah, I can see it. I could see this thing getting turned around. Is it going to get turned around in 1 year? Probably not. But you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, where for the longest time, we couldn't even see where the tunnel was. I couldn't even identify where the tunnel was to try to find the light at the end of the tunnel. Now I'm in it and I see, oh, wait, hold on. There is a light there at the end. Oh, there it is. Let me follow that path. And it just seems like that's what they're doing. And honestly, and I said this on my radio show, it doesn't feel like they're doing anything that's, like earth-shattering or hasn't been heard of or they reinvented the wheel. It's stuff I can understand. It's basic math. 1 + 1 = 2, right? It's not trigonometry. It's not algebra. It's not algebra 2, 3, for whatever classes they have. It's none of those. I didn't go to those anyway. I went to basic math. I know how to count, right? Everything else, I don't know. None of that's out of my wheelhouse, but I can count, right? Basic math. That's what they're doing. See ball, get ball, run ball, pick up first downs, protect the ball, right? Play smart, fundamentally sound football. Offense, defense. Don't beat yourself. Make smart decisions. Don't make mistakes, right? And just go out there and play the game that you love like you love it. Not that it's a burden. And it's looking like it's heading in the right direction. Now, again, the players have a big responsibility now that they're off for the summer. They've got to keep their, head in the books. They've got to still learn what they're supposed to be doing. They got to put themselves and get their bodies in the best shape of their lives, right? So when they come back, they're ready to go. They hit the ground running. There's no, failed physicals and have to reassess, and there's none of that. You want to be able to go. Because if you fail your physical and you're not out there practicing early on, you might get left behind. And what I mean by left behind is someone might take your roster spot. They need to treat it like, hey, every roster spot is up for grab. If you don't come out there ready to roll, somebody else probably will. There's a young, hungry dude. I say that all the time. I try to tell people, new guys in radio coming up, I was like, just be the hungriest dude in the room, right? Be me, right? I was coming up. I was always the hungriest dude in the room. People went on vacation. I filled in for them. I knocked it out the park. They would used to call me and be like, hey, man, can you stop trying to steal my show? And I was like, I'm not trying to steal your show. I'm just trying to do it and show that I can do your show as good as you, if not better. That's it. Brutally honest. Hey, man, it's a competition. It's a doggy-dog world. It's a doggy-dog business. Let's get it, right? And so there's always going to be someone that's hungry for that spot. So these guys that are veterans, they need to make sure that they come into camp the best shape of their life, because there's these rookies, as Pete Carroll told us on Thursday, these rookies are getting after it. They might not know everything just yet. They might not be doing everything the way that they're supposed to be all the time perfectly, but, man, they're showing the energy and they're showing the competitive drive. Everything else is correctable. So, again, I think there's hope. I think there's excitement. I think there's energy. I think there's a belief, and there's a true plan that we've seen so far through 6 months with GM John Spytek and head coach Pete Carroll. What's on your mind? Your calls and texts. We'll close out the show. We'll do that next. 707-654-4693. We'll hear from you. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts. You're off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Start things off with a text from B Prime from the 269. Says, hey, Q, B Prime here. I like the Pratt signing. Hearing his high tackle numbers is good. With that being said, when we had Whitehead a couple years ago, he had super high tackle numbers, but his average tackle was like 7.5 yards past the line of scrimmage, which is super high for a linebacker. Is Pratt the same? Can you do some digging into that? Is that why he was released? As he had a lot of tackles, but it was way past the line for a linebacker. That's not very good. I like the signing, just wondering. As always, keep doing what you're doing. That's B Prime from the 269. Well, B Prime, thanks for the text. And as you heard Mo Egger from 1530 ESPN in Cincinnati, it wasn't all good because he had the numbers. It wasn't necessarily all great. So I'm sure that probably already answered your question. A lot of that to me seems like, yeah, he collected a lot of tackles, but they weren't necessarily tackles where you want them to be. They weren't a bunch of TFLs. They weren't a lot of, stops at the line of scrimmage or a yard or two after. It was probably some, like you mentioned, pretty far down the field, like 7.5 yards, like Whitehead was, to hear Whitehead when he was with the Silver and Black. So that's obviously something to pay attention to. A really good point that you bring up. Thanks so much for the text. Appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Joe in Arizona by way of L.A. He's calling to talk about head coach Pete Carroll and how he'd feel if he finds his way to get the Raiders team turned around. Here's Joe in Arizona.
Yo, Q, what's going on? Salute to you and all the nation, man. This is Joe from Arizona, way out of L.A., though. Born and raised, man. So I grew up with the Raiders in L.A. That's me. My thing is, I want to say, I was just watching your podcast today. Today's Wednesday. Just wanted to say that I agree and with the Pete Carroll. If he was to turn this around, let me tell you, Q, I'm from L.A., so I used to watch USC in those days of glory with Pete Carroll. And then when Pete Carroll and all that stuff happened and he went to the Seahawks, I'm still a Raider fan, but I always cheered for Pete Carroll because he was a good coach. You can see it from back then in those USC days, how he used to be with the players. And then now the Seahawks players are saying how he was around them. Man, I'm so excited. I think this is going to happen. We're prepping up for this, and man, it feels amazing, man. So just like I told you last week when I called, I'll be seeing you the last game of the season against Kansas City, and we're going to get that win. I guarantee it, man. I feel it. It's coming. Raiders! Take care, Q.
Big Joe, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And one, really good call, right? Two, the thing about head coach Pete Carroll is we all know he's a really good head coach to this point, right? I'm not sure why I actually doubted him to begin with, right? When the idea was first floated to me, like, oh, what do you think about Pete Carroll? I was like, whatever. I don't know what made me hesitate there, but okay, that's what we do. Watching these guys at practice, it just gives me so much belief, as you heard in segment number 2, the team is headed in the right direction, right? Would love to see that late season win versus KC, Week 18 at Allegiant Stadium, the first time they ever beat the Chiefs at Allegiant, and I would love for it to mean something. I'd love the playoffs to be on the line. I'd love for all the Chiefs starters to be playing in that game, going up against the Raiders starters, and the Raiders get the first dub at the house. That would be awesome. It'd be just like it was in 2021 when they beat the Chargers there at Allegiant Stadium, and the whole place went nuts, and, who was it? Lil Jon's playing, and confetti's coming from the ceiling. It was a celebration. It was a party that Week 18. I would love for that to be the same thing this year with Kansas City. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Jazzy Jeff in the Bay. Said, what's up, Q? Jazzy Jeff from the Bay. You always say Las Vegas knows something when it comes to sports. Well, I looked at the Raiders' odds for every game in the regular season, and the Raiders have 14 games this upcoming season where the odds are a one-score game. For example, Raiders versus Patriots Week 1 is -3, means Vegas predicts Patriots will win by 3. So it's 14 games like that, which mean the Raiders will be in a lot of one-score games. So that makes me believe that it's not far-fetched that the Raiders could go 10-7 this season. Thanks, Q. Love the show. And shout out to all my bettors out there, LOL. Jazzy Jeff in the Bay. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. When they're like -3 like that, where the Patriots are favored by 3 points, you get 3 points for being at home. So really, it's like a push 'em. And the Raiders have 4 of those games at home where they're favored. So, yeah, I mean, again, they one-score games. They can win those one-score games, a lot of them, the majority of them. Yeah, they could definitely be there at 10-7. I'm definitely not saying that they won't be. No way, right? I just don't want to sit there and put the bar at, oh, hey, I believe 10 wins is reasonable for year one with Pete Carroll when they only won 4 a year ago. So that's why I said 8 or 9 feels good. But a win here, a win there, a surprise victory here, a 50-50 victory there. Yeah, 10 wins is definitely very achievable. And again, something Pete Carroll talked about on Thursday. They want to win. They don't want a grace period. They want to win. They want to go as far as this bad boy will go this year. I mean, he repeated that, and he's repeated that ever since he's been hired. So, yeah, again, I'm trying not to raise the bar too high because I don't want to set anyone up for failure. I want to be more realistic. But, yeah, I mean, you're right. Those one-score games, and that's what the Raiders did really well in 2021 when they made the playoffs. They won the majority of those one-score games. 2022, they lost the majority. Normally, it evens out. The Chiefs last year won a bunch of those one-score games. They probably will regress and not win so many. The Washington Commanders, right? Everyone talks about them. They won a lot of one-score games. They had 8 one-score victories over their opponents last season. 8 of them. They won 8 of those games. So if the Raiders could get anywhere close to that, yeah, they could be on the right track to 10 wins. There's no doubt about it. Thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Raider Goose in the 559. He's calling to give a little insight into Jacorian Bennett's torn labrum injury that he finally got corrected when he got shut down in 2024. Here's Raider Goose.
Hey, what's up, Q? Raider Goose from the 559. First-time caller. Been listening to you for a long time. Love what you do for us. You keep us going during the off-season, man. Appreciate what you do. You said listen to you over here in the Fresno on the radio. So, been a long time listener for me, Q. I just wanted to give you a little insight about JB's injury with the labrum. I know exactly what he's been dealing with the labrum, shoulder popping out all the time. I had the same injury during my senior year in high school, and my shoulder would pop out all the time. Doesn't matter what I did, my shoulder would pop out. I got so good at it, I would pop it back in myself. So I know what he was going through. It hurt. So finally I got it taken care of my senior year off season. Had it repaired, but honestly it's never really been the same. It's just tight, but I'm sure they have better rehab and all that stuff. So I'm sure JB will be good. But keep doing what you're doing, Q. I appreciate you. Can't wait for the season. Let's go Raiders.
Goose, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And, man, you go really far back with me, huh? My Q97 days. That's taking it way back. That's actually funny where we are now. Fast forward to 2025. I used to get in trouble by my then program director, Tommy Del Rio, for talking about sports on the radio. We're a hip-hop station. We're not a sports station. Why are you talking about sports? I used to bring up the Raiders all the time, as you know. I'd be talking trash to 49er fans. I'd be talking trash to Cowboy fans. I'd be talking trash to everybody. But to me, it went hand in hand with hip-hop. Now you look forward and you look across sports and hip hop's everywhere. So I wasn't wrong, but I wasn't in charge either. So, I guess I should have done what he told me to do, but I just thought I knew better because, like, we all do, right? As far as JB and his torn labrum, yeah, I mean, that's no joke, right? And he let it be known, and I knew that he was really banged up, and we had talked about it a few times, but he hadn't gone into that kind of detail that he went in the other day where he said his shoulder would pop out multiple times throughout the course of the game, and he'd have to go get it popped back in, and then boom, he'd be back out there on the field. So I'm hoping that he's able to pick up where he left off last season, but this is a new staff, new style, right? He doesn't really fit the build of, a typical Pete Carroll cornerback. Doesn't mean he can't play. Again, he was playing at a very high level. He's just going to have to, take his game to the next level. And as you heard him talk about what day was it? Thursday? No, Wednesday? It was earlier this week. I don't remember what day it was. One of the 3 days of the mandatory minicamp. He's definitely built for it. He's ready to go out there and compete, and that's all you can ask of him. So, I think he'll be just fine. But, man, to know that he's got 2 healthy shoulders for the first time since college, that's a good thing for him. Up next, got a text from Flatland Raider in the 308. Says, hey, Q, Flatland Raider here from the 308. Question do you think about? What is your take if and when we need another quarterback? Do we trade up in the draft and sell the farm to get there, or do we sign a quarterback that was picked high in the draft that didn't do well with their team? Example, if Penix didn't work out in Atlanta, I don't think an older is the answer and use the Band-Aid method. Just wanted your take. Geno won't last forever. Thanks for all of your awesome coverage every day. Thanks, man. Flatland Raider out. Thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. And ultimately, I think that you get your franchise quarterback in the draft. I really do. The thing about it is you hit it on the head. The Raiders don't look like they're going to be anywhere in position to be a top 3, top 4, top 5 team anytime soon. I don't expect that this season. I expect them to win 8-9 games. That's going to put them, probably in the teens as far as drafting. So if at some point they feel like that they've got to go get their guy, at some point they're just going to have to do it. They're just going to have to go in and trade up and do whatever they have to do to go get their guy. The good thing is Geno's under contract for a couple years, so they have some time to try to figure that out. But, yeah, if things go the way that we all expected and want it to go, they'll be kind of in the situation the Steelers are in, right? The Steelers are picking, 20, 21st, 18, 17, 23rd, like every year. They're never really in position to go get that franchise quarterback. I just think John Spytek will be smarter than what they were in the way that they went about it. I think that he'll find a way to get that quarterback sooner rather than later. And who knows? Maybe we find out that Cam Miller ends up being that guy after a couple years of learning under Geno Smith and company. So we'll find out sooner rather than later. Thanks so much for that text. We'll close out with a text from Rick in the 916. What's up, Q? A lot of linebacker talk right now, but no mention of Masterson. Does he make the cut this year? Thanks, bro. We appreciate you in the 916. That's Rick, 916, which is Sacramento, California. Yeah, Rick, thanks for the text. Luke Masterson is not even on the roster. He's not with the Raiders right now. He is not on the roster at all. So we talked about a lot of linebackers, but he is not one. As far as young guys, Tommy Eichenberg is there. Cody Lindenberg is there. Obviously, Germaine Pratt just signed. Devin White is there. They've got Landon Roberts is there, right? There's a couple guys also in the mix, but Amari Gaynor, I should say, he's in the mix. But, yeah, for the most part, that's it, right? And Masterson's not on the roster at all. That's why you don't hear us talking about him. But thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. That's going to do it for today's show. Got a call from Army Raider that we'll get to on Monday, a text from Mike Rice that we'll get to on Monday as well. We'll get to, we got plenty to get to. News and notes, obviously. We'll see what happens with Shaquille Griffin. Does he get signed over the weekend? And we'll see how everything rolls. But we'll just keep this party going and keep the good vibes rolling here on the podcast and with the Raiders in general. And just know there is no more practice until, now the end of July when training camp opens up. So have a fantastic weekend. All the fathers out there, shout out to you. Happy Father's Day. Enjoy your day. All the mothers out there, hook up the fathers, man. Help them out. Help them celebrate. Have a great day. My dad, I know he's listening to the show. Thank you, Pops. Love you. Happy Father's Day to you, even though I'll talk to you Saturday after I get my hair cut, but it's all good. Shout you out on the podcast. It's all good. So have a fantastic weekend for everyone. Be safe out there always. And like I said, happy Father's Day. So until Monday, Raider Nation, take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.